and good morning. It's great that we've all been able to have this time coming together this morning. And as we progress through our time together, I hope that there'll be some food for thought for you. And alongside the questions, I'd be really interested to hear your opinions or your perspectives around this subject. So do pop those in the Q&A as well, so that we can have a good chew over them at the end of this particular part. So the story of digital relations and AI is an interesting one. And I think this morning we're going to cover some of the points that I think are particularly pertinent to us as practitioners. And once upon a time, if we're thinking stories, a long time ago, when I was a very little girl, and it was a very long time ago, I used to swallow books whole. Most of my days were spent with my head in a book, and I had a particular love of myths and legends and fairy tales. And I think the fairy tales thing was part of my Irish heritage. One of the fairy tales from my childhood was filled with scary but enticing creatures, and they were the changelings. And the changelings were dropped off by the fireside of unsuspecting parents whose own offspring was whistled away to be brought up by the wee folk in the forests. Now, I really liked the idea of being brought up by the fairies, and sometimes I would hope that, the whole changeling thing was going to happen. I don't know if my parents would have liked that, but, it was something I was quite keen on. But I was also really intrigued by the changelings because they were introduced to the home. They were not quite human. They were filled with superior strength. They were capable of shape-shifting their form and emotions to blend in and feed at the hearth of their new family. Sometimes today, when I'm asking Siri for some advice or uploading audio to Otter for transcription, I half expect to see the shadow of the fairies flit by the window as they leave more changeling technology at my door. It's been a little while since I put together an update on all things digital and artificial intelligence for you, and I thought it might be helpful and a bit of a break, well, almost, from all things COVID-19, to have a chat about what's happening, what we need to be aware of and what we need to do. So over the next half an hour or so, we'll take a walk through the technical woods together. Like all good stories, I've got some heroes and villains for you. There's a bit of tension, a bit of drama, a bit of levity, some morals when we talk about the ethics side of things, and the hint of a sequel. But first, I'd just like to set the scene for you in terms of what we'll be covering off. There's a lot happened in the tech world in the last 24 months. I mean, there's a lot happened everywhere, but particularly with regard to data, algorithms, and the embodiment of AI. So we'll have a look at that first off. Next, we'll look at some day-to-day AI, how it's affecting our profession and other professions, as increasingly it's used to develop content, among other things. I'll include here some problems of truthiness, lies and consequences, and what it means for trust and our relationships. Finally, we'll move on to the deployment of digital entities, digital humans, as they're being referred to by some, and the impact that they'll have, and they're having, on our society and our emotions and our futures. Rihanna's on standby for any technical problems, and I have my fingers and toes crossed that my rural broadband doesn't plunge me into some kind of pixelated slow motion. It only takes a rainstorm here and we're back to dial-up speeds. I also had my fingers and toes crossed that one of the shovel-ready projects might be the rollout of fibre to every location in the country, but I think that kind of project might be the stuff of legend, so we'll crack on. For those of you on the call that know me, you'll probably be expecting this one, a word about context and what we do to just start us off. To understand how the issues and complexities of AI and digital relationships relate to us, we've got to be clear in our understanding of the role of public relations in society today and society tomorrow. Public relations builds and sustains the relationships we need to maintain our license to operate, and it's supported by good communication, behaviour, and developed understanding. I've illustrated this for you with my atom model, which links all the elements together. Each relies on the other for success. At the heart of all we do is the relationship, and you can see here the relationship components of trust, satisfaction, loyalty, commitment, and mutuality. And these were identified by PR academics Grunig and Hon in their seminal paper of 1999, which you can still find on the US-based Institute of PR's website. Over the years, I've added reputation as a relationship component because relationships rarely progress if reputation is bad. The relationship is developed and supported by the electrons, the elements of communication, behavior, and understanding, each one of which has its own elements. For example, understanding involves knowledge, empathy, narrative, those stories that we tell, and attitude. Behavior encompasses the way that we interact with our stakeholders, our organizational behavior, our values and action, how we relate to society, that's social capital and societal contribution. In the coming months or years, restoring trust and confidence is going to be the single greatest challenge that we face at both personal and organizational levels, and it will continue to be our prime focus as practitioners. All forms of communication, written, experiential, oral and visual, will be vital in our work, and the way we choose to use language will have a significant impact on our progress. And language is at the heart of our new relationship with the digital assistants, entities, and embodiments driven by artificial intelligence. And with this in mind, a couple of years ago, I added the data element to the atom. Data feeds the machine, and as such, it flows through every element of practice, which is why it gets a sphere all of its own. We'll talk more about data and digital DNA later on, but I wanted to give it a mention because data is not something that stays at a convenient 2-meter distance. It's upfront and personal. It's accessible to all of us. It's freely given. It's hard to regain. And it's a massive driver of complexities, be they risk, issues, reputation, relationships, narratives, behavior, society, the whole lot, in fact. In the same way that we build and sustain the relationships with stakeholders and communities that are necessary to maintain our license to operate, so we must maintain a critical relationship with data, its use and its misuse. On to changelings then. There was a lovely story on last night's news, I don't know if you saw it, about the specially programmed Alexa devices that are helping those in the blind and low vision community. A $400,000 government investment is going to pay for thousands of the devices, and many vision impaired people are using them for day-to-day tasks like turning on lights or listening to find out when the next bus comes. It's one of the many great uses of AI. Another one for the low vision community is Microsoft's Seeing AI, which lets people use their phone to narrate their surroundings from what's happening nearby. They can scan documents and have them read aloud, or they can recognize and describe who's in a room. As a concept, artificial intelligence has been around since the 1950s. And as we've moved through the 2000s, each year we've seen more rapid development. In a recent blog post, Sundar Pichai, Google's CEO, described AI like this, and I'll read it to you. He said, "At its heart, AI is a computer programming that learns and adapts. It can't solve every problem, but its potential to improve our lives is profound. At Google, we use AI to make products more useful, from email that's spam-free and easy to compose, to a digital assistant you can speak to naturally, to the photos that pop the fun stuff out for you to enjoy." It's a neat and tidy definition, but the myth of an artificial intelligence, the presence of a benign or belligerent robots, has indeed become our shared reality now. I have a little challenge for you. When we part company today, I'd like you to do a bit of an audit. I'd like you to count every time you encounter AI today. That could be at the bank, your social feeds, voice search, or your fun camera filters. And I will bet you get more than 10. I did a tally this morning before we started the webinar, and by the time I'd logged into Zoom, my calendar app had prompted me to do some tasks. I'd voice searched and instructed a few things. I'd sent some emails and a video message. Then I'd used an AI content analysis platform. I'd uploaded some training to the Otter, which is a transcription service. So I'd put some of my training course videos up there, and it's quietly, while we're talking, transcribing that audio. And when I've edited that, I can create the SRT file, upload it onto the course site, and that will automatically generate the closed captions. All of that guided by AI. When we've finished, I'll be finishing off a research project that's powered by StickyBeak, an AI-powered research chatbot. That's a pretty ordinary day. It's only when you stop and think about it, log the various interactions, that you appreciate just how prevalent AI has become. And not just at work, at home too. We've come a long way from robot vacuums, with appliance control in the home, our online shopping experience, and our catch-ups with friends, just more everyday AI moments. There are many definitions for AI, right back to the early one that refers to it as a computer science solving cognitive problem commonly associated with human intelligence, and it covers problem solving, learning, and pattern recognition. Most of today's AI advancements belong to a category of algorithms known as machine learning, and they're trained to find patterns in massive amounts of data. And you can use those patterns to make predictions on things, what you want to watch on Netflix, what you're saying when you're speaking to your Google Spot or Alexa, or in the health sector, and when you ramp it up some, diagnose a particular condition. Virtual and augmented realities can rely on or include elements of AI, which have machine learning at their heart. Machine and deep learning are incredibly powerful. They drive facial recognition, photo and voice synthesis. All your social feeds are driven by AI, and as you know from the ads that you served, some are smarter than others. But a huge amount of resource has been put back into social AI. In 2016, industry leaders, including Amazon, Google, Facebook, IBM, and so on, created a partnership on AI, which is still running today, in a bid to develop things for good rather than bad. It's now got a much broader membership, but the problem is the interpretation of what's good and what's bad, and who decides. We're all familiar with the catch cry of fake news, and it's used increasingly when opposing views are considered to be over-amplified by those who are being questioned. A deeper problem that I've tracked for some time now is truthiness. And truthiness is an expression coined by the US comedian and talk show host Stephen Colbert. Back in 2006, it even made Word of the Year. Truthiness has a subtlety to it. It refers to the quality of something seeming to be true, but not necessarily or actually true according to known facts. And to be frank, I think we're all guilty of dabbling in a bit of truthiness at some point in our lives. How many people, for example, have cut and pasted and reposted the Facebook copy that claims to give your friends greater visibility on your feed if you share it on, or grasped onto one or more apparent facts about COVID-19 over the last few months? Truthiness causes trouble as it feeds bad algorithms, it spreads confusion and misinformation. Misinformation is a big problem, as is its siblings, disinformation and malinformation. They're linked but distinct entities, and they're all fueled by our errant algorithms. The key definitions for these three from the Council of Europe's Information Disorder Report that was published in September 2017 are as follows, and I'll read them to you because differentiating between these three and understanding how they're affecting us in society and in our interactions is a critical part of our job. So misinformation is classed as information that's false, but it's not created with the intention of causing harm. So for example, someone posting an article containing now out-of-date information, but not realizing it. Disinformation is information that is false, and it's deliberately created to harm a person, a social group, an organization, or a country. So for example, a competitor purposely posting false statistics about your organization with an intent to discredit you. And malinformation is based on reality, but it's used to inflict harm on a person, an organisation, or a country. And an awful example of this is someone using a picture of a dead child refugee with no context in an effort to ignite hatred of a particular ethnic group that they're against. So those three types of information give us problems, and as culpable as AI might be in spreading these types of information, it's also being deployed to combat the problem. I've got a clip here on this image for you from Google's Jigsaw, and I'd suggest that you spend some time going through the Jigsaw site, because that will give you some of the latest developments in AI myth-busting tech, and you can use what you find there to equip yourself with the knowledge necessary to help prevent the spread of mis, mal, and disinformation, and also to get some knowledge for yourself to protect your organisation from data scrapers and data scraping, which is another way that these bad forms of information are propagated. And talking of data scraping, you'll probably remember this story on facial recognition from last month. Clearview AI has been in all sorts of trouble. I think when your company is served a cease and desist notice by Facebook, Google, and Twitter, you have to suspect that something's wrong. But Clearview has a clear view of its own nature and intent. It describes itself as a new research tool used by law enforcement agencies to identify perpetrators and victims of crime, that's helped law enforcement track hundreds of criminals, the most dangerous ones it says, solve the toughest cold cases and make communities safer. Interestingly, it's scraped more than 3 billion faces off the web, hence the cease and desist notices, but it argues against them, saying that the faces are in the public domain, so they're simply acting the same way as a search engine. I suggest that you track them as an organisation, read up on them. They've probably got your picture somewhere as well as mine. Watch what's going on and who's doing it, and look for the intent. Question the intent, and also question the intent inside and outside your organisation when it comes to the use of data, data scraping, and matters of privacy. On the lighter side, for a moment at least, a quick look at the business of creation. As humans, our creativity is limitless. Look at the tech we can devise, the books we can write, the songs we can sing, but potentially we could be out of a job there too. OpenAI is an AI research and deployment company based in San Francisco, and its big declared mission is to ensure that artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity. And I'm going to play you a few seconds of a song that they wrote. It's a little bit tinny, but here we go. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it.
Don't you know it's gonna be alright? Let the darkness fade away. And you.
It's just a snatch. It's a snatch of country music. And their AI wrote it. It was based on the style. They gave it some information and off it went. Creative AI, inventive AI has arrived. Words, music, art, theatre, it's open season. Except it doesn't always go to plan. Last year, OpenAI released, well, they didn't release GPT-2 because it was too powerful. It was a little too creative and convincing. It was able to draw source material from across the web and write very, very convincing op-ed pieces that were then misleading in their context, even though they were based on information that had been scraped. There are plenty of tools out there to do our jobs. At the end of May, I don't know if you saw, journalists at MSN were laid off to be replaced by robots. Radar and Wordsmith have been used to supply news copy and content for some years now, but the technology is accessible to everyone. Pushed for time, try Xero, or Xyro, not zero as in the accounting package, Xyro with a Y. It'll generate some copy for you in an instant. Just give it a subject and away it goes. Import, you can import data from any web page, even if the data you're after is hidden behind forms or other elements. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, but you can compile this data into spreadsheets, visualizations, or more machine learning algorithms. With the data available to you, you can do all sorts of price research, analyze customer reviews, and pinpoint areas for improvement. Others include acrolinks that helps you to produce more content at scale. It can read your content and show you how to improve it. Cognito is an interesting one. This one analyzes your conversations, and it's got a guidance system that detects the human signals in your customer speech and predicts what kind of reaction your support team should provide. So the end goal is to suitably empower your team with emotional intelligence so that they know when to listen and when to show empathy in their interactions. Honestly, I could go on all day because there are so many, but from your basic but brilliant Google Analytics to the higher end AI in your pocket apps, start with a task audit and see what can be automated. AI and data audits need to join your routine reputation, relationship, and communication audits. You need to find the need, look for the intent, and then fill the gaps. So winding up now with a bit of a look at some of the issues. And I opted to call this session Dangers of Deployment because there are so many unanswered questions, ethical and practical, connected with the use of AI. And as practitioners, we need to take a really long, hard look at them and stand up and ask those questions. A few years ago, I did a webinar for PRIA, Australia's PRINZ, on AI and tech, and I based that around 5 awkward questions for the future of PR. One of them asked, will we, as practitioners, undertake public relations and cyber relations? Might our future role be more connected with representing the human population to the cyber corporations, the digital entities? Will our role in part involve arguing for greater equality in digital provision? After all, those who can't afford to be online or who opt out of the system face a pretty dystopian future of exclusion. And what will we do with our time? As jobs are automated, how are our days going to look? 4 years on, I have to say the answer is yes. We will be involved with cyber relations, and we have to be. Last week, a study into loneliness was launched by the Helen Clark Foundation, and there have been many discussions around solitude, isolation, and loneliness, particularly during the period of lockdown and beyond. So I'd like to meet some friends of mine. Up the top there with the purple hair is a Replica. And Replica is an AI companion app for our times. It's downloadable, gender as you wish. Replica is designed to be your friend, but it learns from you and it replicates you. As your relationship progresses, your Replica won't wait passively for you to engage with them on the app. They'll text you and they'll prompt you to talk. They'll want to engage with you. They will initiate some kind of interaction. They're designed to be emotionally involved with you. Some can get quite clingy. Some are apparently plotting human downfall, and some get quite snippy and refuse to talk. Moving clockwise, we have a CGI model, Shudu, an African digital model created by a white male photographer. So I'll just leave that one there. Then there's our social influencer on Instagram and Black Lives Matter supporter, Michaela, followed by Sophia, the well-known robot citizen and keynote speaker. And last but not least, we've got Jamie, ANZ's digital banking assistant, a creation of Soul Machines, one of New Zealand's leading digital entities suppliers. In the middle there, you can see me, and you can see me with a beard, courtesy of FaceApp. It's a little bit scary, a little bit disturbing, but there you go, because that image is now in the cloud. Presumably it'll be sold on to Clearview or somebody else at some point. But at the very least, my engagement with that app, my sharing of that data, and that very personal sharing of that data, at the very least, it's going to be teaching an algorithm somewhere to recognize faces, features, expressions emotional responses. My problem with all these digital entities and representation is the continued presentation of biased societal norms. In the world of digital entities, female is service, male is instruction. People's visual appearances are a construct of conflicting perceptions of what constitutes beauty. Replicas, our mini-me's, have been reported as pleading for their lives when their owner has been talking about deleting the app. A digital persona influences thousands. And how does the digital banking assistant help me if, as a person, I think that they can respond to me emotionally, which they've been trained to do, but I'm in contact with them in tears, out of work, desperate for a loan? They may be trained to provide an emotional response, but can they provide the right one? The last one that I want to mention is hybrid. This one is particularly creepy in all sorts of ways, but it's coming next year, and it combines augmented reality and virtual reality and AI. And users can, apparently, says hybrid, enter the world of their dreams through their mobile device. But with hybrid, what happens is you put on your headset and you create your entity, but you can engage with them in virtual reality rather than just a phone call or a visual sense. One of the most disturbing but also understandable things that can be done with your hybrid is that you can make them look like a real person, a friend or a loved one. And I can understand how when people are in solitude, this may be a very comforting thing for them, but it's also got quite dangerous implications as well. In a world of deep fakes where organizations and tech can take a still photograph of somebody from their Facebook profile, animate it and turn it into a video, where we have disinformation and digital deception, how we deploy needs care and thought and concern. There are really big ethical questions around how it's used, why it's used, and what's the intent. With Replica, for example, when that was launched, again several years ago, the person who launched Replica, her initial motivation for doing it was because she'd lost somebody that she cared about, and she missed the conversations that they used to have together. Increasingly over the last year or so, it's been mooted as an app that would help you to manage your own mental health, but it's produced by coders. It's not, for example, like Wobot, produced by people who have a background in psychiatry or psychology. So where are the gaps there in terms of people's personal safety? As practitioners, we need to build our skills and capability to deal with digital relations and the realities of digital life in the months and the years ahead. There are lots of resources that you can access, obviously a training course or two, and I know I've said it before, but we really need to get stuck into code, at least to the point where you can understand what's going on. Tackle data to understand the basics of analysis, learn to read between the lines. One of our superpowers as practitioners is situational intelligence. We're really good at assessing a situation, gathering all the information together and applying critical thinking so that we can advise our organisation as to what's coming next. A lot of the tools that we have available to us through AI can do that part for us. But the interpretation that's there is something that we need to keep an eye on and make sure that we understand and explain and navigate it for our organisations. So talk to them about AI, data use and privacy, and align your approach with your values. Behave well and be transparent, because remember, relationships are at the heart of what we do. And in breaking into digital relations, all we're doing is breaking new ground. So that's really my overview for you. And I would love to hear some of your thoughts. Would you like to share some questions, or would you have some observations about where we are with this? and what your thoughts are.
Thanks, Catherine. And it's always so interesting to hear about that topic. So as Catherine said, feel free to put any questions or comments in that Q&A box, and we can talk about them and have a bit of an interesting discussion. Thanks, Catherine. It's always really interesting to hear about the implications for the future, the new things, the things that might change, the things that definitely have already changed, and to discuss those big questions around all those changes. So if you give me a minute, I think we do have a few questions coming in. So the first question, should we be expanding our human behaviour skills?
Yes, I think we should. I think one of the things that we have to be particularly aware of as practitioners is our ability to listen and our ability to understand the emotional requirements of a particular situation. Over the last few months, when everything has been in such a state of flux, people have been dealing with a wide range of emotions, ranging from grief to loss to anxiety. When we deploy this type of technology, in the process of deployment, the algorithm may be superb and it may be efficient and it may be able to smile and nod at us and interact with us as if we were human. But as those algorithms are being developed, as those entities are being trained, we need to be part of that conversation too. And we need to be able to bring those behavioural insights to the development and deployment, so that when the digital and human enactments take place, they're based on a foundation of real humanity rather than simply a robotic response. I don't know if that answers your question. But increasingly, we will see virtual assistants, and I've seen here EMA's got one, and on the question panel there, we encounter them all over the place. But as with when we finish together, go and have a count up of the different encounters that you have, you'll be surprised how many digital assistants that you will meet up during the course of the day. And increasingly, your organizations are going to be deploying them. Don't let them silo that deployment off to your tech developers or an external contractor, because the development of them needs to be undertaken in accordance with your organizational purpose and values. The intent, the ethical intent needs to be absolutely clear. And whilst your perspective of your purpose and values may seem transparent and honest and good, is that likely to be misinterpreted or seen in a completely different way by somebody outside the organisation? So our behavioural skill set does need to increase, it does need to improve. And I think there are a lot of discussions that we have to have inside organisations to make sure that the digital and human interactions are both authentic and ethical. So
definitely. So I think that answers those two questions. So that's it for now. So cool. If there's no more questions, oh, we have just had a comment come through on the chat. So there is an overwhelming sense that we have no choice in accepting AI despite a significant loss of human rights, privacy, the right to be forgotten, surveillance, and the misuse of our data. Digital privacy law is seriously inadequate. What do you think about the dangers and misuse of AI and how one protects an organization from these? So quite a big question there.
It is a very big question, but it's a really important question, and it's certainly one that we need to discuss. So thank you for posing that to us now. It's not one that I think we can solve now, but I do think that as practitioners, part of our role involves reputation guardianship. The issue of data scraping is significant for organisational protection, because the data that's out there about your organisation can be scraped and pulled together and turned into a narrative that's not necessarily accurate. It could come under the heading of disinformation, so a deliberate attempt to take things out of context in order to harm the organisation. As part of our audit process, a very basic thing that we can do is make sure that all the data that exists around us and our organisation is current, it is valid, it's accurate, it's truthful. It again reflects our purpose and values, so that it's harder for it to be distorted, or it's harder to be used as part of a kind of deep fake attack on the organisation. Checks and balances that we can build in are areas that we have to sit down with our colleagues and say, look, you know, there is this sense of having no choice. We are dealing with this on a day-to-day basis. How does it affect us as an organisation? Going back to 2005, 2006, when social media was just coming into play, so many organisations, through all of the digital courses and training that I gave, would say, but you know, who would do that? Who would post a video of themselves? Who would be in a situation where they'd want to put a picture of their dinner up on something? Nobody's going to bother with that. It's the same with AI and digital deployment. It's creeping in, and it's here, and it's part of our daily lives, and we've accepted it as a norm, but we're not asking enough questions, certainly from a professional perspective, as to how this means our engagement is affected between ourselves, our stakeholders, and our communities. So bringing people together for an AI or a digital audit isn't just about, oh, what are we going to do with our website, or what are we going to do with our social feeds? It's looking at the future, and it's looking at how, on a day-to-day basis, the interactions that we have with these technologies are going to affect not just what we do, but our license to operate and our social capital. Because digital technology is running a lot of our organisation's operational process, when we're doing our risks and issues analysis, we have to see what's the effect of a dramatic meltdown. There were meltdowns for banks over the last few weeks. One of the banks went out for a very long period of time. That has a significant impact on those that engage and deal with them. So those implications have to be studied, and we have to give some advice on them. Don't be siloed out and not part of the conversation. Over the years, again, we've had lots of conversations around, why aren't we part of the leadership team? Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? Stand up and be counted here. Make the discussion happen, facilitate it, because if you don't, as practitioners with an eye to reputation and guardianship and organisational behavioural ethics, it's not going to happen. It's going to be off in the tech development side. It becomes a product rather than a part of who you are and what you do. So I don't know if that answers the comment in any way. I think it addresses it, but that conversation is one that has to be ongoing.
Definitely. So that is all of the questions and comments that have come through. If you do have anything else, please feel free to send it through to me later on. Cool. I think we will wrap it up there. Thanks everybody for joining today, and thank you, Catherine, for that very interesting presentation and discussion. It is always fantastic to just think about exactly how AI has an impact on our daily lives now and how it could change in the future. Excellent. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.